Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and inclusive community. I'm so glad you're with us today. Breathing connects all life. So before we get started with this service, let's take a few deep breaths, cognizant of our connections and the gift of life. In a minute, we'll be lighting our chalice, so please make sure you have your candle and matches ready. But first, Katie Taylor will lead us in our opening song, Let All the Beauty We Have Known.
Please join voices. Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts the loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth, life's music and its poetry surrounds and bless us through our days. For these we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
We light the chalice this morning with words from the Spanish poet Antonio Machado. Let's not be in a rush for the glass to overflow. It must be filled first. Well, good morning and welcome to the 2020 pandemic edition of the Favorite Poem Service. The Favorite Poem Service has been an annual QUUF tradition since 2001. So this year marks the 20th time our congregation has gathered together to celebrate favorite poems. And this is the first time that the service has been presented as a recording. To give you a sense of what will happen this morning, rather than a sermon, what you're going to experience are short videos of 9 different congregants, ranging in age from teenagers to elders, who will appear in small groupings throughout the service. And you should know that some of the readers read quickly, some read slowly, some people will make eye contact, and other people are fiercely focused on the text before them. One came carrying a guitar to sing about primates. And in all cases, these people are doing something profoundly beautiful and brave. They are appearing before their community to share a place of personal intimacy, and they're inviting you to listen. This is a practice that our vulnerable and hurting world needs right now. Deep sharing, worth listening to. So let us savor this time of togetherness and sharing. And as we move into the service, I also wanted to let you know that we made an editorial decision in creating this video to include streaming text of the poems when their poems are being read. And for those of you who find this visual element less than ideal, please accept my apology, as I'm the person who made that final determination that including the text would be a net positive. If you find this visual element helpful in your experience this morning, please thank Stan Cummings, who is the wizard who put all those words together to make the streaming possible. And I would also like to let you know on the front end that some poems are soft like a whisper, some howl, some roar with rage and with glory, some seem simple, while others present the thinnest shaft of light, thereby giving us life within the darkness. And I guarantee you that you will not rationally understand each poem, though each and every poem that you hear this morning is going to be worth exploring again and again. So I'd like to thank each and all of our readers, and especially those who are stretching themselves to do something to nourish the community. And as we begin, let us keep in our minds and our hearts an aphorism by the poet Antonio Porcia. I know what I have given. I don't know what you have received. And now this morning, the time for all ages. Take it away, Bo.
Good morning, everyone. Today is our annual poetry service, which is always an interesting service of different congregants sharing their favorite poems, as well as a little bit about themselves. And I started thinking about this service, particularly when Stephen Cunliffe was talking about being inspired to write poetry at his first service at QUUF. And so I started thinking about the different inspirations we have for poetry and what makes a poem. And it made me think of this story, Daniel Finds a Poem by Misha Archer. So please enjoy. Daniel knows all the rocks, trees, and animals in the park. But on Monday morning, Daniel sees something new in the park gate. A sign reads, "Poetry in the Park, Sunday at 6 p.m. What is poetry? Daniel asks. To his surprise, he looks up when he hears a spider say, "To me, poetry is when morning dew glistens." On Tuesday, Daniel climbs the old oak tree and he sees a squirrel. "Squirrel, do you know what poetry is?" "Poetry is when crisp leaves crunch," Squirrel tells him. On Wednesday, Daniel calls into the chipmunk's hole, "Chipmunk, can you tell me when poetry is?" Poetry is when you have a home with many windows in an old stone wall. On Thursday, Daniel makes a boat with a leaf for a sail and watches the wind carry it across the pond. He calls quietly to Frog. "Excuse me, Frog, what is poetry?" "Poetry," says Frog, "is a cool pool to dive into." On Friday, Daniel parts the cattails and finds Turtle. "Hello, Turtle. I have a question. Do you know what poetry is?" "I think poetry is sun-warmed sand," Turtle says. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel finds Cricket in the shade of the slide. And when the shadows are long, Cricket fills the air with music. Is this poetry to you, Cricket? Singing at twilight when day is done? Indeed it is, Daniel. That night, moonlight fills Daniel's room, and he hears a "ooh." Leaning from his window, he calls to Owl, "Owl, what is poetry?" "Oh, poetry. Poetry is bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go, dear Daniel." And she whispers as she flies off into the night. On Sunday, the sun wakes Daniel up, and he is happy when he remembers that it is Sunday. "Today is poetry in the park," says Daniel, "and I have a poem." Morning dew glistens. Crisp leaves crunch. There is a home with many windows in the old stone wall. Cool pools to dive in, sun-warmed sand to lie in. Singing at twilight when the day is done, bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go. On the way home, Daniel stops to watch the sunset reflect on the pond. "That looks like poetry to me," says Daniel. "To me too," says Dragonfly. May you find inspiration in the poems today, and may you find poetry wherever you go.
When I was 10 years old, I fell in love with God. The Jehovah's Witnesses came into the desert where I lived on a ranch. They came 100 miles round trip every Thursday night to tell me about their God and this book of rules. And I fell in love with structure. My structure was, there was a goat and a cow to milk every morning and night. And it didn't have to do with that kind of rules written down and someone you could fall in love with. But I fell in love, and my dad finally said I was not to mention any more scripture. I was not to mention God. And he told them they could only come once a month. Well, he relented, at least for the once a month, because they weren't to come at all. He got tired of it. So when I was 18, that meant I wasn't supposed to go to college. I was supposed to go door to door preaching the word from that book. But I gave myself a reprieve of 1 year to decide whether that God really was a reasonable being. And after a year, it was a lot of work. Then my freshman year was so much work. I found a translation enough in John Donne's poetry and Dylan Thomas that I kept on going to college. And I threw out the word God. Well, through the years, I've had to take it back. And I have a reverence now for translation. And the reason I picked this poem is because Hafiz is such a translator. And I want to read his poem, "I Saw You Dancing." I saw you dancing on the roof last night, the roof of your house, all alone. I felt your heart longing for the friend. I saw you whirling beneath the bright rose that hung from an invisible stem in the sky. So I began to change into my best clothes, hoping to join you, even though I live 1,000 miles away. And if you had spun like an immaculate sphere just 2 more times, you would have found God and me standing near you and lifting you into our arms. I saw you dancing last night on the roof of the world. Hafiz feels your soul in mine, calling for our beloved.
Hi, I'm George Stanley. When you think about your life's journey, do you ever stop to consider alternative directions it might have gone? I've had these kind of thoughts, and I'm sure you have too. Just think, an unexpected event when you turn the corner might change everything in your future. Now, the poem I'm going to read addresses this theme from the standpoint of an all-knowing God. Now, I've long been captivated by this theme because it forces me to consider free will and how an omniscient, loving God might deal with our existence, both in the present and the future. The God Who Loves You by Carl Dennis, taken from his Pulitzer Prize-winning book entitled Practical Gods. It must be troubling for the God who loves you to ponder how much happier you'd be today had you been able to glimpse your many futures. It must be painful for him to watch you on Friday evenings, driving home from the office, content with your week. 3 fine houses sold to deserving families, knowing exactly as he does what would have happened had you gone to your second choice for college, knowing the roommate you would have been allotted, whose ardent opinions on painting and music would have kindled in you a lifelong passion, a life 30 points above the life you're living on any scale of satisfaction, and every point a thorn in the side of the God who loves you. You don't want this, not a large-soul man like you who tries to withhold from his wife the day's disappointments so that she can save her empathy for the children. And would you want this God to compare your wife with the woman you were destined to meet on the other campus? It hurts you to think of him ranking the conversation you'd enjoyed over there higher in insight than the conversations you're used to. And think how this loving God would feel knowing that the man next in line for your wife would have pleased her more than you ever will, even on your best days when you really try. Oh, can you sleep at night believing a God like that is pacing his cloudy bedroom, harassed by alternatives you're spared by ignorance? The difference between what is and what could have been will remain alive for him even after you cease existing. When you catch a chill running out in the snow for the morning paper, losing 11 years that the God who loves you will feel compelled to imagine scene by scene, unless you come to the rescue by imagining him. No wiser than you are, really. No God at all. Only a friend. No closer than the friend you met at college, the one you haven't written to in months. Sit down tonight and write him about the life you can talk about with a claim to authority, the life you've witnessed, which, for all you know, is the life you've chosen.
Hi, I'm Pam Bartlett, and the poem I have chosen to read for you today is by Indiana attorney and poet Max Ehrman. I was introduced to this prose poem in my late teens while attending college and figuring out what direction my life would take. When I met my late husband, George, I felt that he didn't share my love of poetry. So I was very surprised when I found a brown newspaper clipping folded in his cufflinks box. Desiderata, which means things desired, sat staring back at my tear-filled eyes and grieving heart. Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even to the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexatious to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser persons than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Many persons strive for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection. Neither be cynical about love, for in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune, but do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond a wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here, and whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whatever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations. In the noisy confusion of life, keep peace in your soul. With all its sham, judgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be cheerful. Strive to be happy.
Thank you, Maureen, George, and Pam, for sharing those inspiring poems. What I'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us this morning. I'd like to invite you to say hello in the comment section and tell us your name, where you're from, so that we might greet you. I'd also like to invite you to the virtual coffee hour that follows the service. If you haven't been before, that link is about to show in the comment section, and we'd love to meet you there. And if you find this service to be useful or inspirational, and perhaps, hopefully, both, please do share the link to this recording with your friends and family. So welcome, everyone. We're so glad to have you with us today. It's now time to receive our offering. So if you would like to contribute to the building, this sort of online programming, and the staffing costs at QUUF, you have three options. You can text the amount that you'd like to give to the number that's now showing on your screen. Again, it is the same number every week, so just write it down and you won't have to worry about it next week. Or you can go to our website, quuuf.org, and push the donate button, or you can simply mail us a check. And with that, we will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to Pat Rogers playing Sonata in F minor by Domenico Scarlatti. Thank you, Pat. Although we have no congregation-based joys and sorrows this morning to share with you, I'd like to place a stone in recognition of just the horrible things that have happened this week with Hurricane Isaiah and with that explosion in Lebanon. There's been a lot of suffering, and all of our suffering is connected somehow, and so we place this first stone in recognition of that. Our thoughts and prayers are with them all. And then we place this second, final stone for all of those joys and sorrows among us that are not expressed yet, but are of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence, which will be followed by a musical response by Pat Rogers.
To the Invisible Girl by Thomas Moore, read by Isabella Nunn. They try to persuade me, my dear little sprite, that you are not a daughter of ether or light, nor have any concern with those fanciful forms that dance upon rainbows and ride upon storms. That, in short, you are a woman, your lips and your breasts are as mortal as ever were tasted or pressed. But I will not believe them, no science to you I have long but at last, and a careless adieu, still flying from nature to study her laws and dulling delight by exploring its cause. You forget how superior for mortals below is the fiction they dream to the truth that they know. Oh, who that has ever had rapture complete would ask how we feel it, or why it is sweet, how rays are confused, or how particles fly, to the medium refined of a glance or a sigh. Is there one but once would not rather have known it than written with Harvey, whom volumes upon it? No, no, but for you, my invisible love, I will swear you are one of those spirits that rove with the bank where at twilight the poet reclines, when the star of the west on his solitude shines, and the magical fingers of fancy have hung every breeze with a sigh, relief with a tongue. Oh, whisper him then, 'tis retirement alone can hollow his harp or ennoble his tone. Like you with the veil of seclusion between his songs to the world let him utter unseen. Like you, a legitimate child of the spheres, escape from the eye to enrapture the ears. Sweet spirit of mystery, how I should love to, in the wearisome ways I am fated to rove, to have you forever invisible nigh, inhaling forever your song and your sigh. Amid the crowds of the world and the murmur of care, I might sometimes converse with my nymph of air, and turn with the taste from the clamorous crew to steal in the pauses one whisper from you. Oh, come and be near me, forever be mine. We shall hold in the air a communion divine, as sweet as of old, as imagined to dwell, as in the grotto of Numa or Socrates' cell. And oft, at those lingering moments of night, when the heart is weighed down and the eyelid is light, you shall come to my pillow and tell me of love, such as an angel to angel might whisper above. O spirit, and then could you bar the tone of the voice to my ear so bewitchingly known, the voice of the one upon earth who has twined with her essence forever my heart and my mind. Though the lonely far from the light of her smile, and exile and weary and hopeless the while, could you shed for a moment that voice on my ear, I will think at the moment my Clara is near. that she comes with a consoling enchantment to speak, and kisses my eyelids and sighs on my cheek, and tells me the night shall go rapidly by, for the dawn of our hope of our heaven is nigh. Sweet Spirit, for such be your magical power, I will lighten the lapse of full many an hour, and be fortune relies, frown as they will, hope, fancy, and Clara may smile for me still. I think that this poem is about a person who is missing someone they love, and the person is imagining them as a spirit that's coming to them.
Reconciliation, a Prayer, by Joy Harjo. 1. We gather at the shore of all knowledge as peoples who were put here by a God who wanted relatives. This God was lonely for touch and imagined herself as a woman, with children to suckle, to sing with, to continue the web of the terrifyingly beautiful cosmos of her womb. This God became a father who wished for others to walk beside him in the belly of creation. This God laughed and cried with us as a sister at the sweet tragedy of our predicament, foolish humans, or built a fire as our brother to keep us warm. This God who grew to love us became our lover, sharing tables of food enough for everyone in this whole world. 2. O sun, moon, stars, our other relatives peering at us from the inside of God's house, walk with us as we climb into the next century, naked, but for the stories we have of each other. Keep us from giving up in this land of nightmares, which is also the land of miracles. We sing our song, which we've been promised has no beginning and no end. 3. All acts of kindness are lights in the war for justice. 4. We gather up these strands broken from the web of life. They shiver with our love as we call them the names of our relatives and carry them to our home, made of the 4 directions, and sing. Of the south, where we feasted and were given new clothes. Of the west, where we gave up the best of us to the stars as food for the battle. Of the north, where we cried, because we were forsaken by our dreams. Of the east, because returned to us is the spirit of all that we love. This poem was written in 1993. I did not know of this book or know of Joy Harjo's work until Christmas Day of 2018. On that day, a dear friend gave me this book with the inscription, Joy Harjo has given me a new language. May she do the same for you. I was given the gift of language. Joy Harjo's language is a brilliant blessing in a world where crisis and catharsis are inextricable, a world where the land of nightmares is also the land of miracles. Harjo's a native woman from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. In 2019, she became the first Indigenous person to be U.S. Poet Laureate. I wish I'd known this poet, in 1999 when I spent 3 weeks doing service learning in a Navajo village. I was 20 years old, and I remember not having a language for what I was experiencing. I remember witnessing the consequences of our nation's abusive colonial power. But I also witnessed the undying spirit of the Navajo people in the stories, the chants, the sweat lodge, and the generosity of the community I visited. Indeed, it was the land of nightmares and the land of miracles. I wish I could have turned to this book, this poem, when I was a young adult, struggling to connect with my culture, to embrace my interior landscape. Harjo's poetry invites us all to gather up the strands broken from the web of life. And that is why I've chosen this poem. It's given me a new language. May it do the same for you.
Good morning. I'm Brett Offit, and this morning I'm going to read the poem Ithaca by the modern Greek poet C.P. Kavafi. My wife Sandy introduced me to this poem many decades ago while we were living in Greece. The very first time I read it, it really gripped me, and I've read it countless times since then. Every time, it really has deep meaning for me. I think this is probably because Kavafi tells me that even though I need goals in life, and maybe even some overriding goal, it's really the trip toward those goals. It's the journey. It's what you learn. It's what you experience. It's what you enjoy that really, really matter. That meant a lot to me and still does today. My friend Colin, who lived in a small village outside of Canterbury in England, really exemplified this poem for me. Colin ended his battle with cancer a couple of years ago, but during the 30 years that he fought, Colin never stopped traveling and learning and experiencing and enjoying. At our suggestion, this poem was read at his memorial service. And so here, this morning, is Ithaca for Colin Gray and for all of you. When you start the trip to Ithaca, I'd say, pray the road be long, full of adventures, full of learning. The Lystragonians, the Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't fear them. That sort on your road you'll never ever find. If you keep your thinking high, if a prime excitement grips your body and your spirit, the Lystragonians, the Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you won't meet, unless you're lugging them along in your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. I'd say pray the road be long. May there be many summer mornings when with what pleasure, what joy you'll enter harbors you've never seen before. Do stop at Phoenician markets, do acquire fine wares, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, seductive perfumes of every kind, as much seductive perfume as you can. Go to many Egyptian cities, there to learn and learn from those who know. But I tell you, always have Ithaca in mind. Arriving there is your goal. Just don't hurry the trip in the least. Better that it lasts for many years. Better that already old you anchor off the island, rich with all you gained on the trip, not anticipating that Ithaca will give you wealth. Ithaca gave you the wonderful journey. Without her, you wouldn't have started out. But she has nothing to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca hasn't fooled you. Wise as you become with such experience, by now you'll understand what Ithacas really mean. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Forbes, and I'm going to play a poem by Sir Raymond Douglas Davies. My earliest memories involve music, in particular rock and roll. As a literal child of the 60s, the sense of unlimited possibility, hope for peaceful change, and universal love were imprinted on my psyche. The desire to get back to the garden, in Joni Mitchell's words, as an escape from the contemporary madness, was also a part of the dreamscape of my childhood. And since I was too young to participate in the action, I do remember the 60s. Like many UUs, I find the sacred in the natural world, seeing the spirit of life in animal, vegetable, and even mineral. Also, like many, I struggle with my place in it. As a young adult, the idea of striking out possessing nothing more than a backpack and sleeping bag held great appeal until I found that creature comforts were more enticing to this creature. Still, part of me wished for life in a simpler key and place. This poem, set to music, celebrates a desire for wholeness and fullness through the droll observances of the leader of the most adamantly British of the invasion bands. sophisticated, 'cause I'm living my life like a good Homo sapien. All around me, everybody's multiplying till they're walking around like flies, man. I'm no better than the animals sitting in the cages in the zoo, man. 'Cause compared to the flowers and the birds and the trees, I am an ape man. I think I'm sophisticated and I'm so civilized, 'cause I'm a strict vegetarian. With the overpopulation and inflation, starvation, and the crazy politicians, I don't feel safe in this world no more. I don't want to die in a nuclear war. I want to sail away to a distant shore and make like an ape man. I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man. I'm a King Kong man, I'm a voodoo man, I'm an ape man. 'Cause compared to the sun that sits in the sky, compared to the clouds as they roll by, compared to the bugs and the spiders and flies, I'm an ape man. La 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 la. In man's evolution, he created the cities and the motor traffic rumble. Give me half a chance, I'd take off my clothes and live in the jungle. 'Cause the only time that I feel at ease is swinging up and down in a coconut tree. Oh, what a life of luxury to make like an ape man. I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man, oh, I'm an ape man. I'm a King Kong man, I'm a voodoo man, oh, I'm an ape man. Look out my window, but I can't see the sky. The air pollution's fogging up my eyes. I wanna get out of the city alive and make like an ape man. La 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 la. Come on and love me, the ape man girl. We'll be so happy, my ape man world. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man, oh, I'm an ape man. A King Kong man, I'm a voodoo man, oh, I'm an ape man. I'll be your Charles and you'll be my Jane. I'll keep you warm if you'll keep me sane. We'll live in the trees and eat bananas all day, just like an ape man. I'm an ape man, I'm an ape man, oh, I'm an ape man. A King Kong man, I'm a voodoo man, oh, I'm an ape man. I don't feel safe in this world no more. Don't want to die in any kind of war. Want to sail away to a distant shore, live like an ape man. La 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 la.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Nelson, and I've been a member of QUUF since 2006. When Joseph offered me the opportunity to share one of my favorite poems with you, I got a book off the shelf that I hadn't looked at for several years and immediately selected 7 or 8 poems, which, at Joseph's insistence, I reluctantly narrowed down to one. In rereading the book, I made a discovery about the significance of those poems to me today. But let me start at the beginning. When I was 8 years old and my sister Jean was 6, Dad would read to us at bedtime. I think he took seriously his responsibility to raise his children as good human beings, and so he began one evening with the Bible, intending to read the entire book to us straight through. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. A little bit over our heads, but we listened attentively until we got to the long lists of the children of men with unpronounceable names who lived to impossibly old ages, and we mutually agreed to drop the Bible reading project. The next night, Dad entered our room with a slim volume called 101 Famous Poems, the book I took off the shelf a couple weeks ago. Dad began to read, and I can remember the delicious eeriness of "Quoth the Raven, Nevermore." Tears still come to my eyes when I hear the poem beginning, "The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding up to the old inn door." When I heard, "I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree," that ended with, "And only God can make a tree," that was something I could wrap my mind around. And then there were aspirational poems with lines such as, "If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs," And the one that I still remember 67 years later, the ill-timed truth we might have kept, who knows how deep it pierced and stung. The word we had not sense to say, who knows how grandly it had rung. Jean and I kept asking for another poem and another, until Dad finally said, "Okay, but this is the last one for tonight." He never preached to us, but I realize now that by the poems he chose, he conveyed his deepest values to us. The poem I have chosen for today is called Abu Ben Adam, written in 1834 by Henry James Leigh Hunt. I chose it because I can see in it the kernel of my highest and deepest value today. Abu Ben Adam, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace, and saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adam bold, and to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The vision raised its head, and with a look made of all sweet accord, said, "The names of those who love the Lord." "And is mine one?" said Abu. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. Abu spoke more low, but cheerily still, and said, "I pray thee then, write me as one that loves his fellow men." The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it came again with a great wakening light, and showed the names whom love of God had blessed. And lo, Ben Adam's name led all the rest. Thank you for this opportunity to share a favorite poem of mine.
Hi, I'm Abby Krecka, and I've actually been wanting to do the poetry service for quite some time, and finally this year I followed all the way through. So I've been trying to put my finger on what is the thing about this piece of poetry. It is elusive and has almost slipped from a feeling into language a number of times. There's a feeling of sorrow and loss about the poisoning of the American working class, the cheapening of what was good and wholesome, to be returned twisted into a bitter, simmering nationalism. Like those pithy country songs played at political rallies, written to turn a buck, but lacking any kind of soul. It is almost about my working class parents and my family, and the way I use my determination and precision of craftsmanship to sew garments built to last for generations. It feels like practical magic to sidestep the disposable culture and to honor the skills that I carry in my bones and blood. In both the national and the personal, it is time for working collectively to create from that which is crumbling. There is immense power in finding the sacred in the mundane. Each of us chopping wood and carrying water for ourselves, but then also for each other. To Be of Use by Marge Percy. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, and pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals or field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud, botched. It smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real.
Please join voices. Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire and have not love, my words are in vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed. By this we worship and are freed.
So we began the service with a short poem by Antonio Machado, and we're going to bring the service to a close with words from Antonio Machado. Beyond living and dreaming, what matters most is waking up. And we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment, the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. And now please enjoy the postlude, which is Sonata in A major by Domenico Scarlatti, played by Pat Rogers.